Okay. Looks like we have folks filing in for the presentation today. We'll start in just 1 minute. Just want to make sure we get a critical mass of people in here. So just give us 1 more minute and then we'll get started. Should have music for this, right? Okay, I think we're getting close to critical mass here. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in because we only have an hour. First off, thank you all for joining our webinar today for CMMC and securing CUI, protecting CAD files from readiness to certification and beyond. My name is Blake Wood. I'm the VP of Global Alliances for Secude, and I have a couple guests here with me. I will pass it over to Rob Teague to introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his role at Redspin.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation to join you guys. Very excited about this presentation. I'm Rob Teague. I'm the Director of CMMC Services at Redspin. I lead the consulting and certification teams. I am a lead CCA myself, part of the CMMC Standards Council, and play a vital role for our organization in getting DIB contractors to that finish line.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. And go ahead, Jay, and introduce yourself, please.
I'm Jay Junta. I'm the technical lead for the US at Secude. I'm kind of ahead of all trades. I deal with customer support, demos, work alongside R&D QC, and I've prepared a demo here today that I'm looking forward to showcasing our HaloCAD for you.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, so again, thank you everyone for joining. We're going to, feel free to enter questions into the Q&A. We'll address all those at the end because we're time constrained. We have some excellent questions. Thank you all to everyone who entered your questions on registration. We've got some great questions to start with, and we'll need at least 10 minutes toward the back. So I'm just going to jump right in. Today we're going to have, we've just gone through the introductions. Bob Teague is going to give us a review of CMMC. We're going to talk a little bit about the Microsoft Purview platform and what that is all about. We're going to then introduce you to the HaloCAD solution, do a live demo of HaloCAD, talk about how HaloCAD interfaces with PLM systems and the secure collaboration features and options for that, as well as how it addresses compliance, and a case study at the end. And then hopefully we'll get to a good 10 minutes of Q&A, and everybody should get their questions answered. So without any further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Rob. And Rob, walk us through CMMC a little bit here to start off.
Yeah, sure. So let's kind of level set this as you guys get ready to watch this demo. I'm going to go really quick because I think the emphasis needs to be on the demo Jay's going to perform. So there are still 3 levels to CMMC. Level 1 is aimed at those organizations that deal with federal contract information. They must abide by the 15 requirements out of NIST SP 800-171 Revision 2. A POAM is not allowed at that level, and the SPRS score must be signed off by somebody on the leadership. Level 2 requires C3PAO-led assessment. This will involve 110 requirements, all 14 domains, and 320 objectives. The next level is CMMC Level 3, which is a DIBCAC DCMA-led assessment. That's the internal auditors for the DoD. And that will be based off a subset of roughly 24 requirements out of NIST SP 800-172 and roughly 101 objectives. So that's the structure of the CMMC rule. When you think of CMMC, that is the 32 Code of Federal Regulations, or that 32 CFR rule. That's where it's all wrapped into. That posted to the Federal Register on 15 October 24 with an effective date of December 16, 2024. So that's when the official CMMC certifications were allowed to begin. The rule that goes in conjunction with the 48 CFR rule. And this is causing a lot of disruption across the DIB community because Mr. Duffy is coming on board as the acquisition supervisor or leader, if you will, of that organization. And he wants to take a deep review into that 48 rule. The 48 rule is really how the DoD is going to enter CMMC verbiage into the contracts, both existing and new contracts. The other thing is it brings a 4-year phased approach for a rollout. So year 1 will be from the effective date of the 48 rule. Year 1 will be level 1 contracts. Year 2 is level 2. Year 3 is level 3. And by year 4, everything should be caught up to date. That did get paused in the administration's 60-day pause. That's normal when new administrations come in. They just want to make sure that rule is tied and it's meeting all the requirements of the 32 rule. That is the same thing Mr. Duffy is going to do. He wants to take a deep dive into it and make sure that it's accurate before it gets posted to the register. If you're using an external service provider, all you need for your evidence for your certification assessments is a customer responsibility matrix from them, delineating what they're responsible for versus what you are, and bring them to your assessment as an extension of your team. If you're leveraging a cloud service provider, there's 2 types. FedRAMP authorized, which is like an AWS Gov or a Microsoft Gov Clouds. Just need their customer responsibility matrix. The other ones are the FedRAMP equivalents, such as a Prevail or a Deltek Cloud. You'll need their body of evidence as part of your assessment process. Artifact retention. Once you complete your certification assessment, you must hash everything to the hashing guide for CMMC and then archive that for 6 years. POAMs are allowed in the phase 2, in the level 2 and level 3 pieces of the CMMC program. However, for CMMC level 2, the 3-point and 5-point items are not allowed in a POAM. So if we come across those and they are deemed a not met, it essentially failed the assessment. So you really want to make sure those 3 and 5-point items are good to go. The final thing for you is that the 1-point items are allowed into the POAMs. There is one exception on a 5-point. That's for the FIPS modules. Whole nother story. However, the 1-point items are allowed in the POAMs. And in order for a POAM to come into effect for you, you must score a minimum of 88 out of 110 score for your SPRS. Okay, that's a quick snapshot of CMMC. If you got any questions on any of that, you can go out to our website at redspin.com. We have all that sitting in a resource center for you guys to take advantage of. Back over to you, sir. I'm looking forward to seeing what Jay's got for us.
Super. Thanks, Rob. And
Yep.
Just if you, anyone out there is concerned, if you're seeing CMMC for the first time, you're just trying to get up to speed, this is not going to be death by acronym. At the back of this presentation, which we will share with you afterwards, we actually have a glossary. So, C3PAO, POAMs, ESP, all that is detailed in the glossary at the back. Microsoft Purview, what is it? It is a data governance platform, and it doesn't just do data governance. It also has risk and compliance pieces, as well as data security, which is where Secude spends most of our time, is with the Microsoft Purview information protection technology. This technology is a way to classify, label, and encrypt data, which comes in super handy when you're dealing with CUI. We also want to highlight the data loss prevention capabilities of Purview, simply because that's the traffic cop that ends up enforcing a lot of the policies and rules, even out at endpoints, within email, on your SharePoint site, OneDrive. All these things come into play when you're dealing with data that's being protected with this platform. And we'll talk even in more depth about that. And so what Secude does is we do a couple of things. We integrate with the Microsoft MIP SDK, so we can talk to the services at Microsoft that provide Microsoft Purview information protection. And we also integrate deeply with the CAD libraries for the CAD software, both at the workstation side and the product lifecycle management side. We'll talk a little bit about PLM systems after Jay's walkthrough of the solution. But what's really cool about this technology it provides as part of it this classification engine, which we take advantage of to help us automate the classification of certain CAD files. And we'll discuss how we do that in a little bit. But more importantly, what Microsoft has done with Purview is they've built in certain policies that truncate or either allow or deny certain application functions. As you can see here on the far, in the upper right-hand corner, we have grant or deny M365 application controls. These are controls that are actually built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint. When you have an MPIP protected document, you can create policies that say allow edit, don't allow edit, allow the ability to print or export. So we honor those and we perpetuate those application functions down into the CAD application. So this is entirely seamless for the users. They don't have to worry about what, if they're overstepping their bounds, they're being enforced as they're actually modifying the file. So very handy technology if you don't want to have to train engineers on how to manipulate files as they're flying across from one system to another. So what this does, in essence, for anyone who's familiar with Purview, and if you're not, just very quickly, the default MPIP protection box here, those are documents that are considered to be Microsoft native documents. And so this includes, of course, Word documents, Excel documents, PowerPoint documents, also certain types of media files. Those are the files that Microsoft can handle out of the box. What they can't do out of the box is apply MPIP to third-party files or files that are not Microsoft files. And so this is where the MIP SDK comes into place. This is where products like HaloCAD come into place, where we actually apply MPIP to CAD files. And so by doing that, what we're doing is we're extending the compatibility, or we're extending the Purview platform to cover these other file types, DWD or DXF, files that are in Autodesk. And we have basically support the top 4 CAD vendors, and we'll drill into that in just one second. But why is all this important? If you use the MPIP technology or the Microsoft Purview information protection technology that you have with HaloCAD, when you apply this to a file, that security follows that file around wherever it goes, inside the enterprise, out of the enterprise. And this is why the data loss prevention, or DLP, is so important. Now, this is enforcing what you can do with the files within your enterprise. Can you email it out? Does this person actually have access? Things like that. So the DLP policies are there to prevent that data from walking out the front door. And that's why it's important. Once you apply this MPIP technology to a file, it shows up on the DLP radar screen. And from that point forward, Microsoft is getting telemetry information and who's trying to access it. Is it being hacked into? Are there too many failed attempts? Things like that. But essentially what this does, and for those in the CMMC world who understand what's happening, we're creating a lot of physical enclaves for CUI data. This ability to classify data, encrypt the data, and have it be part of a larger data collection within an enterprise creates a virtual enclave. So now if you label CUI data, now it's going to be treated differently than the rest of the data, and only those people that are allowed to access it can access it. So now we're going to talk a little bit about HaloCAD, the HaloCAD solution itself that takes advantage of MPIP, or Microsoft Purview Information Protection. And this really goes to the problem and why CMMC exists in the first place. Case study number 1, the F-22 fighter and the Chinese J-20. It's well known out there that certain drawings may have gotten to the hands of the wrong people. And this makes it very easy to steal intellectual property and apply it to your own products. So this has happened to the US government, which is why CMMC is now in place, so we don't have this valuable IP get into the hands of the enemy. But this is also an issue in the commercial space as well. So you can see here we have a bunch of counterfeited cars. And we have a counterfeited the VW Beetle, the Porsche Macan, and the Toyota Land Cruiser, all being made in other countries. And this is possible because if you can get a hold of CAD drawings for the parts, or even probably a 3D assembly drawing of the whole thing, now you have the ability to replicate that in your own manufacturing environment. So this is a huge fraud situation that costs the economy upwards of $600 billion, almost over $500 billion. So going back to the HaloCAD solution again, what we do, again, this is seamless. We plug this right into the CAD application itself. We have a plugin that gets installed, and that plugin is a broker between the Microsoft Purview Information Protection Services hosted in the Microsoft clouds. And we do support all the Microsoft clouds, including the government clouds. And also, talks to the CAD application, understands the different file types. And that way we're able to apply this labeling and protection to the file. And the file is encrypted, whether it's at rest, whether it's in transit, or whether it's in use. And so to give you an example, if somebody's working on a HaloCAD protected file at their workstation and somebody's able to remote in and steal that file is useless if they take it outside of the enterprise because they don't have access to the Microsoft 365 components that actually can unlock this file. So it's essentially crypto shredded. So this is a great way to protect data against the insider threat. When you start talking about government secrets, you can imagine, the money that could be involved. Somebody is working at a company and is offered a lot of money to take something out the front door or exfiltrate it out of the company. It's a pretty tempting offer. That's the insider threat we're talking about. There's also malicious insider threats, people that do bad things. But more importantly, we're talking about intellectual property. So the CAD and PLM systems that we support, again, it's the big four. It's Autodesk, it's PTC, it's Dassault, and Siemens. And most all of the products that they have are things that we can handle with our software. So what you see when the plugin's installed, and we'll get to Jay in just a second here so I can show you it live. But when our plugin's installed, you actually see this sensitivity label. And this is our integration. This actually shows you what security level you're at. If people have the correct permissions, and again, the permissions are all controlled by the policies of that label. If somebody, whoever the user is, has permissions, they can change the label. But again, they're also going to be forced to only the functions that they're allowed to use based on that label. So I'd like you to see it in real time, and so I'm just going to pass it over to Jay. And Jay, go ahead and I will stop sharing. Go ahead and take us on a demo.
So everybody should be able to see my screen. And just to give a quick background of this, we're on AutoCAD 2024, and we're also going to be utilizing Volt. So to break this down in steps, first I'll show manual labeling, which is applying a label to a file within the CAD application itself. After that, we'll showcase checking out a file from a PLM, which will be Volt for this demo. And to note, this works very similar across the CAD application as well as the PLM application side. So all of them have our ribbon or a drop-down menu where you can apply your label, the HaloCAD menu. And then for PLM, it works the same way, but we'll work through it step by step. So here I have an example drawing, and what we're going to do is showcase the label here. So this is what we call our HaloCAD ribbon. This is where you set your purview label to a CAD file similar to how you would in an Office file. If I click the pencil, you'll see that I have all my purview labels available to me right here to encrypt this file and protect it. For demo, we can do a read-only. This is if you were to share it with a customer who, or a partner who needs read-only access or view-only access. Once I click the green check mark and save the file, it's actually in the background encrypting this file and making it a purview protected file or a P file at heart. So to note, we do maintain that original extension, such as DWG, as the CAD application wouldn't know what a P file is. So with HaloCAD, you're able to maintain that original extension while it's still a protected file. So at this point, you can see that this is a protected file. And we also have watermarking in AutoCAD. We do support watermarking or annotation across the board. As Blake mentioned, we do NX, Creo, and depending on the application SDK, such as Autodesk offers watermarking, some of them do not, so that's where we have annotations. But you're able to apply these watermarks directly from Purview. Everything is set up in Purview, and it's brought over into HaloCAD without any additional steps. So for HaloCAD, just for engineers, if you're looking to not clutter your screen, you can hide this ribbon. But if we go to status, we can show what's going on. So I'm connected as designer number 3. I'm the owner of the file. We have our read-only Purview label. And these are all the permissions, again, directly from Purview. You can do view, edit, copy, print, export, change rights. We also support expiration dates, whether that's set to 2 weeks or a specific date. That's all managed on Purview, and it carries over to HaloCAD. We also support offline access if that's enabled for that label. And as simple as that seems, that's how easy it is to apply a label through our manual option in HaloCAD. You apply the label, you save it, it's protected at rest, in motion, no matter where it goes, a hacker steals it, it's encrypted, and unless they have Purview permissions to open this file, plus in the CAD scenario, HaloCAD, it's a dead file to them. So at this point, I will go ahead and showcase Vault. So Vault is Autodesk PLM, for those who may not know. And PLM is where you store, for example, your CAD data. You can also store Office files, and we actually protect all of this. So when you're checking a file out of a PLM, HaloCAD for PLM notices that checkout or download. It applies a label based on metadata, and it delivers it to the engineer's computer. So I will go ahead and open our Vault folder here. And just for demo purposes, we can open this file here. For the demo, we're using metadata based on the folder location. So highly confidential means that a highly confidential label will be applied to this file on checkout. So we can go ahead and check this file out. And, this is not related to HaloCAD, this is just property related, but that pops up as well. So you can see here that we have the highly confidential label applied to this file. The pencil's grayed out. That's because I don't have permissions to change the label on this file. I can also not see any of the other labels linked to your Purview account. So if we go to HaloCAD status, I'm still connected as designer number 3. The owner is this long value here, which simply means Vault owns this file. We have our highly confidential label. I can view, edit, and export, but I cannot copy, print, or change rights. So again, the pencil's grayed out. If we go to the main menu, we try to print, it's grayed out. And due to our integration with Microsoft at the OS level, if people try to use, a snipping tool or print screen, actually receive a blank image. So we've tried to protect your files at a deep level, and that's again really how simple it is to use our HaloCAD products. And I'll hand it off to Blake, as that's the demo in a nutshell.
Thanks, Jay. Now you could tell from the demo, I hope everybody picked that up, that it's very seamless, it's built in. And so again, when you're talking about manipulating data, moving data around, trying to make it as seamless as possible, especially for engineers, is probably a good idea. One of the things that comes up, especially with CMMC, is if you have a product lifecycle management system, and you may have data in there, certain files that are CUI, certain files that aren't CUI. This is another system that you have to manage through that process. What Jay had showed you is on the checkout, we're actually intercepting that checkout from the user, and we're applying a sensitivity label based on certain rules that we're defining for how we want to map the PLM metadata against Microsoft Purview labels. So it's completely possible to categorize, and a lot of these PLM systems actually have their own data classification. it'd be perfectly feasible to have your PLM system be able to recognize which files are CUI, which files aren't, and then we could then follow through with a classification label to denote it as CUI or not CUI. So this is another way to get into systems that may have a collection of data that's CUI and not CUI, and create a differentiator between the two. So what you're looking at here is this is the HaloCAD architecture for our system when a PLM system is involved. Again, this you have your CAD application where it says application clients up here in the top left. Down below, you have the PLM application. And so the CAD workstation is typically going to navigate to the PLM system to pick that file out. And when it does that, we have an integration that sits on the PLM system and understands that the file is being checked out, and then it communicates with something called the Halo engine. And so the Halo engine is a central server. It has classification rules, or mappings, I should say, for how specific files in the PLM system need to be labeled and protected. This communicates with Microsoft, so it's got access to all of the services, including the services that control the encryption process. Such that this happens before the user actually receives the file. So this is a great countermeasure for protecting against the insider threat. But more importantly, it's going to classify that data as it leaps out of that system and encrypt it so that nobody can compromise it from that point forward. So again, this diagram is showing how our Halo engine, another component, is introduced to talk to the PLM system and do that brokering between Microsoft services and the actual CAD services on the PLM. And again, PLM's in the glossary in the back. And this is what it looks like. So these are user definable. Every company is probably going to want to classify their files differently. But again, you can define how you want to map your data classification labels or your data sensitivity labels to specific CAD files based on metadata. So again, it's like building firewall rules. You're going to add the rules, and if it passes those, it's going to it's going to add this label. If it goes through another set of rules and it matches those, it's going to add a different type of label. And again, at the time the label's added, we're going to encrypt the file. And this is sort of again, it's a good thing to encrypt your data, but it's what Microsoft sort of requires for the Purview platform, because it doesn't understand non-Microsoft data. You have to encrypt it. You have to turn it into a blob so that they can append this labeling manifest to the document. Once that's done, it's now part of your enterprise. It can be tracked. As you saw, you can see what rights you have to it and all of that. Again, it's a very integrated system. One of the things I forgot to mention is everyone's probably wondering, how do you get Purview? Purview is not a separate product. It used to be, but Purview is now part of a Microsoft 365 subscription, which a lot of companies have. A lot of enterprises have Microsoft 365. So if they have a Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 license, they already have Purview. So it's just a matter of setting it up, defining the policies, and you're ready to apply it to the HaloCAD solution. And so what this technology, what MPIP technology can do, although it can be a little challenging at times, is allow for completely secure collaboration between partners. Again, company one, let's call it the host company, the one that's actually going to share their data with company two. These files are going to get wrapped up in Microsoft Purview information protection. They're going to be encrypted. So when they share those with company two will need to have an application or a way to decrypt that so they can actually work on that file. So if companies need full edit access to these files, we can they would need to get the HaloCAD solution to allow full access to that. We have other other software to facilitate that is free to facilitate read-only functionality. But again, it has to be installed at the partner that you're sharing it with. So again, imagine a world where you can share a file with anyone outside of your enterprise, and only those people you're allowing to access it through your policies can access it. Anybody who's not on that policy can't get to that file. It won't work. And so the collaboration value proposition is an important one. And we also realize that, especially companies in the DIB space, manufacturers that may have potentially tens or hundreds of supply chain partners, trying to get them all to on board with installing a solution so they can get access to a file may be a challenge and may be impossible. And so that's why we created something called HaloConnect. So HaloConnect is a collaboration platform. It's very secure. It was actually designed for CMMC, and it's got all of the compliance checkboxes covered for anything that would be CMMC compliant, and it's very simple to use. So for our HaloCAD customers that want to opt into HaloConnect, which is actually a SaaS service, it's online. Once they're a user of the platform, they simply drag and drop a file over to that platform, and leaving it in the HaloCAD protected format. HaloConnect can decrypt HaloCAD protected files, and they can send then from the HaloConnect platform, they can send an invite to their collaboration partners. Here's this file. Come in and collaborate with it. When that external user clicks on that link, what's going to happen is they're going to be authenticated by the HaloConnect platform. So it's actually disconnected from the Microsoft Purview information protection Entra ID authentication that happens. And we do our own last mile of authentication for the platform. What this does is it offloads an amazing amount of administration overhead. If you want to do this with MPIP, what you would need to do is you'd need to go find out, you define upfront all of your collaboration partners, and excuse me, I'm sorry for the ringing phone. You'd have to define all your collaboration partners. You'd have to have you'd have to add them to your Entra ID authentication directory as an external user. And then and only then can you add them to the necessary policies, groups, et cetera, they need to be to gain even view-only access. So there's a lot of work to that. And so with the HaloConnect platform, what you can do is just authorize users who have the ability to actually move the files in this platform. They create the invites that go out for the collaboration, and then the collaborative users come in and never get physical access to the file. They're collaborating with this in a web environment only. So once they're done collaborating with the file, it's removed from memory, and they've never taken possession of that file, so they can't steal it. So this is actually a really good way to collaborate securely by using this very, very rich featured 3D web viewer. And so here's a snapshot. At some point we'll do a live demo for people that are interested. But here's a snapshot of both the user interface that you see as a user and the actual 3D web viewer that anyone who is collaborating with will see. And again, the 3D web viewer has a lot of features. I think something like 180. But you can do things like, because it's 3D, you can actually rotate the models. You can explode them, you can measure parts, a whole bunch of different things you can do in this collaboration environment. So we're really excited about this, and it solves a lot of problems for the collaboration with these files, especially CUI, and especially other types of regulated files like export controlled data, which we'll talk about in a couple seconds here. So one of the things that we didn't touch on in the demo, but is there as part of Microsoft Purview information protection, is the ability to revoke access. I mentioned a little bit about tracking. files. Again, when you apply MPIP to the file, every time a user tries to access that file, Microsoft's getting telemetry data on the file. Who's trying to access it? What is their IP address? Things like that. If it's ever determined that a file got out into the wild and you don't want anyone to access it from the user interface that we designed from HaloCAD, you can just hit revoke access. And at that point, nobody outside of the owner can actually access that file. So again, track and revoke, a very important feature and something that HaloCAD can do because of the power of Microsoft Purview Information Protection. Just a quick note on compliance. We can work within all of the Microsoft 365 clouds, commercial, GCC, GCC High, the DoD cloud if you need to be FedRAMP. We can run in a FIPS mode. So again, we're using AES 256 CBC as the encryption algorithm. And the keys are actually managed by Microsoft. So they are a key custodian. If you need to, and there are companies that will want to do this, if you want to have complete control over your encryption keys, you can use the double key encryption option from Microsoft. This requires a service with an HSM behind it for the customer to hold the key, and that key actually wraps the Microsoft service keys. And so at no point does Microsoft have access to your keys. A very powerful thing. But again, it's been out there for a little while. I actually worked on the integration between Talos and Microsoft, and we haven't had a lot of adoption yet. I think that's going to change, especially as customers adopt MPIP and they want to have more control. And out of the box, our application HaloCAD satisfies 9 of the 14 CMMC practice families. And we can enforce things like specialized CUI dissemination use cases. So if you have a specialized CUI where the users can't take control of that or gain access to that, then we can enforce that with this type of technology. For FCI, of course, we can satisfy that because we're keeping that data safe. But it also has applications for anything's export control, like ITAR or EAR data, things that you can't let anyone get their hands on. So great way to not only protect your data internally, but if you have to share it out, then this helps as well. So again, just a little bit about the compliance. And I'm getting down to the end of this, and I want to cover a use case with you. This is a customer of ours. It's kind of public knowledge by now because we've got a banner on our site. So I can talk a little bit about Crane. But Crane's one of those companies, obviously a very large DoD operator that specifically wanted this for their CAD that is CUI. And so this satisfies the zero trust thing that everybody in the that deals with the federal government is trying to provide. It allows them to track and control access to their CAD files that are CUI, both inside and outside. And it helps them speed up the compliance process just by checking some of those boxes. Again, it'd be great to do a more in-depth study. We could probably do a whole webinar on Crane, which I'd love to do with them to talk in more detail about exactly how they're using this and how they're benefiting from using this and complying with CMMC. Okay. Gosh, we got through that in 40 minutes, but I'll tell you, we're probably going to need it. We're going into the Q&A, and like I said, we have a lot of questions. And so thank you all. I'm just going to quickly flip to the back here. This is the glossary I spoke about. So if you're wondering what C3PAO means, it's back there. ESP, all of the acronyms that you're seeing in here are going to be in the back. So starting with questions, I'm going to go ahead and dive in. Again, got some great questions. If you have any more, go ahead and post them up. We'll see if we can get to all of them. But the first one I want to address is a really good one. And it depends on which data security thought process you use. The question is, we're planning to use BitLocker for encryption. Why is that not enough? There's two things to think about here. There's passing an assessment or an audit, which has certain requirements, and then there's actually protecting against breach. And the question I would, what I would say to you is, even though we have regulations that have been out there for a long time, like I come from a background that's heavy on PCI, which is in the payment space. There's plenty of other regulations out there, GDPR and whatnot. Why are the data breaches not decreasing? Well, it's because there's loopholes, or there's the ability to comply, but it may not be strong enough to prevent a breach. And one of the examples I would give you is if you have BitLocker on your computer, you have your CAD file there. It's doing what's called storage level encryption. And so, yes, it's using FIPS. It checks the box. And when data lands on that, if anybody gets a hold of the media, it's encrypted. However, if you're logged in, you've opened up the BitLocker encrypted stuff so that now at the service level, you're actually able to access the file and get it in the clear. If somebody remotes you, they're sitting on the desktop just like you are. And so they now have access to your clear file. So that's all I would say. I'm going to pitch it over to Rob and just get a take from a real assessor, his thoughts.
Yeah, no, that is a great point, Blake. I answered the question just on the surface of what we see out there during the assessments. BitLocker on the endpoints is perfectly fine. Works just beautifully.
Totally agree.
It'll get you past the certification because it is FIPS 140-2 validated. But as Blake mentioned, there are certain nuances. With CMMC, everything depends. So it depends on what exactly it is you're trying to protect. And I think Blake covered that a heck of a lot better than I could have in typing it. So the point you brought up, Blake, is spot on. While it is protecting the data at rest, what about the data in transit?
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of the things I didn't share with the audience is I am a recovering security practitioner. So I do get that bug once in a while. The next question, what is the projected final CMMC ruling going to post for Title 48?
Oh, yeah. Let me go to my trusted source for information. Been using that since 2019, folks. No, I will tell you, since the program moved over to the CIO office, they've met a lot of their timelines that they've set. We heard recently at a conference down at the CIC Southwest conference down in Texas. It was a few months ago that it looks like it's on track to be signed by this summer. Now, that depends on Mr. Duffy. He is going to dive into that 48 rule to make sure, one, that it's easily understandable to you, the readers, and two, it directly aligns with the 32 CFR rule. But by all purposes, we believe it's going to be completed by this summer with an effective date 60 days following the date it's posted to the register.
Thank you for that, Rob.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, I'm using GCC High. What are my best options for compliant backup of our PDM database for SecureWorks? I didn't understand the SecureWorks part because I see them as sort of an XCR platform, but let's just assume the question is, how do I back up? I'm using GCC High. What is a great option for backing up my PDM database?
Yeah.
Robert, do you have that?
Yeah, for any of these folks, you can go out to the FedRAMP marketplace, type in backup solutions, and it'll pull down all the FedRAMP authorized solutions. We ourselves at Redspin use avpoint.gov. And we opted to have that point directly into, so it's an external connection for us that comes directly into our GCC High cloud. And then when it backs everything up, it backs it up right in the cloud for us, so it's still secure. But there's avpoint.gov is just one of many that you can use. The question you really need to ask is if it's performing the backup for you, where is it going to store that backup data? And if it's not going to be in your environment, what environment is it going to be in? And is that environment protected with FIPS encryption at rest? Veeam is another example. Veeam does great backups. And it's also FedRAMP authorized.
And the next question is kind of related. It says, what are the options for maintaining compliance for CAD PDM servers? And that's a pretty broad question because, you know, those could be deployed anywhere. They could be deployed in the cloud. They could be deployed on-prem. I would say, you know, I don't know, Jay, you work at PDM, PLM systems a little bit. What are your thoughts about that? Other, you know, obviously use HaloCAD, but if you have any ideas you want to share.
Well, as you mentioned, HaloCAD's our best way to work alongside CMMC because when it files into PDM, it's technically protected by the PDM itself. So it's really going to depend where that PDM is located and how you're securing that environment, where the PDM is located, the server, whether it's a cloud or, you know, physical server. And as we mentioned, we keep the data safe when it leaves that PLM, or PDM, but it's really important to also protect that server where the PDM or PLM are located. And as mentioned, it's a broad question, so you might have to look into a route for finding out how to harden that server to really keep it safe.
Good answer, Jay. Thank you. The next one's an interesting one. It's Jay, you may know what an MBD file is, but other than MBD files, a CAD drawing consists of a drawing file as well as 3D model file, which is used to establish the view on the drawing. Do both the 3D model and I think there's, come on, don't do that to me. There we go. 3D model and drawing require CUI marking, or, oh, that's a great one. That may be one for Rob. Do both 3D model and the drawing require CUI marking, or just a drawing that contains the pertinent node type information?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Very simple to remember. If it processes, stores, or transmits CUI, it has to be labeled. Especially if it's ITAR data, which many of you deal with because you're part of a bigger organizational kind of project for a lot of the primes. So if that ITAR data, there is a no foreign national view to that data, so it must be protected to that level as well. If it contains CUI, it's got to be labeled, even if it's just a part by itself or the drawings themselves.
Yeah, and again, it's the great thing about Microsoft Purview Information Protection is, you know, you have role-based access controls. You know, every operating system, file system has them. And so that's great. But what this does is actually attaches almost like attribute-based, you know, security to the file itself. And so if somebody's not allowed, you know, to have access to the file, that's going to be attached to the file itself. So that is a great way to sort of, I guess, double down insurance that the file is not going to be accessed by the wrong person.
The other thing I'd like to point out here, Blake, is that, you know, for the data tagging with Microsoft, typically you need the E5 license to perform that. Here, you've got it right in this application. So
that's right.
They could actually save the organization a lot of money with that.
Yeah. Another note on CUI marking. It's something that we obviously, we've had a lot of discussions internally about, you know, our ability to manipulate the CAD files. You saw in the demo that Jay performed is actually, you know, the watermark the minute he picked the label. We've talked a lot about and are actually working on an MVP for CUI marking for CAD files. And so this could be applied, you know, at the, you know, by the designer at the workstation. This could be applied from the PLM PDM server. It could be applied in a batch process through a workflow product. We have one called HaloShare that can actually manipulate CAD files like that. So again, we realize that it's, you know, now that everybody's having to mark everything, that we should maybe think about providing this as a module for HaloCAD. So it's something that we're seriously considering and working on right now. And then we have one that may be a partial question. And so if somebody has, if whoever entered this one, if they could maybe, you want to enter one in the Q&A, handling CAD metadata extract from CAD models using code. There's not really a question there, so I'm not exactly sure on what someone was asking. Let's see if I've got them all. And I think that was the last one that we had. I'm going to do a sweep through. Okay,
there were a few questions that were addressed also in the chat, so I don't know if you guys want to.
I'm pulling up the chat right
perfect.
now. Yeah, I'll just go through these, go down. And so again, we have a few of them in here. So this is good that we have the time. Can the MPIP label be added to XML JSON-based CAD metadata? Well, that's a good answer. You know, again, those are text files, Jay. So, you know, an XML file, JSON file is just going to be viewed as a, yeah, that's a great question. Now I want to go back to the presentation and see what the Microsoft file types are. Because again, Microsoft is very XML forward. They're not as much, you know, they started with XML, they created SOAP web services and things like that. And they were sort of late to the game with JSON and REST and all of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if XML is a Microsoft native. But have you ever had any call for applying labels to those types of files, Jay?
We have not had a customer that does it, but we can confirm that the MPIP labels can be added to XML and JSON-based CAD metadata. And that's due to the MPIP SDK, and allows you to do that pretty much exactly as you're mentioning. It's already
natively, yeah.
Yep, supported natively.
Super. So yeah, the answer is yes, absolutely. And again, you know, whether it's native or whether it's using our extension, we don't matter. Or we don't matter. We don't care. Just as long as you can do it and we can read it. Next, our IT group is using BitLocker for encryption. Can we achieve the CMMC level 2 cert with just BitLocker for our CAD data? And Rob, you're an assessor. Would you pass it?
Yeah,
I think the answer is yes.
This is kind of tying back to where we've already addressed this, really. Yeah. So, you know, there's two different kind of views here. One is getting certified. Two is actually protecting the data. And I hope everybody's doing the latter part of that. So while you're complying with CMMC, remember, these are base rules. These are just NIST 800-171 is stripped out of 853, which is a much more robust program for security. So hopefully maturity is in your framework to reach. And that's why there's a difference. There's BitLocker at rest on a laptop for any organization absolutely will pass the CMMC certification. But there's some nuances depending on what types of files are being stored on that device. In this case, the CAD files, and as Blake mentioned earlier, there's a little bit of risk in moving that from that device over to the actual machines to print whatever it is, so, you know, that you're working on. So keep that in mind. But for on the surface, general users, laptops, BitLocker is FIPS 140-2 validated encryption.
Yep. Thanks, Rob. This next question, cost per seat, I think Hunter had created an answer. Hunter's on, our North America sales guy, and he is on, and he has an answer for that. So I won't read that out, but it's a two-parter. So does this only work with Microsoft Purview? And the answer is today, yes. We actually have a prototype we're calling HaloProtect, which is an alternate encryption provider. And the reason we did that is, especially when you get into DoD related situations, that you can come across air-gapped environments, things like that. We've actually spoken with manufacturers that have that requirement. And so we've created something that doesn't rely on the Microsoft services. The one thing about Microsoft Purview Information Protection is you have to be connected to the internet at least once a month to be able to use it. And so we do have an offline mode, but again, it requires connection to the services intermittently. So it is not an entirely air-gapped solution. It also, does it work with any SIM or endpoint security? And the answer on SIM is yes. We can support any SIM. We prefer Microsoft Sentinel because we have an integration. We have a connector to it from our Halo engine. So that is native. But again, we also output into standard log file format. So you can port that anywhere you want. And for endpoint security, yes, you can, again, the endpoint DLP rules that I outlined earlier in the presentation are one. Other companies with DLP that do endpoint types of policies, any company out there that can recognize Microsoft Purview Information Protection label in their DLP platform, and that includes ForcePoint, Symantec, a company called Safetica out of Europe, who's now making a push in the US. These are all companies that can key on that and reuse that data. So again, if you don't want to use Microsoft for your DLP, you can always use one of these other third parties. But we're making sure that MPIP label is on there, so all of these DLP systems can consume it. We answer the one about MPIP on XML JSON. Let's see.
Neston he wants to know if we can expand on the risk with BitLocker. Yeah,
Sure.
so again, BitLocker is protecting the data at rest on the laptop. That's really what it's designed to do. What Blake is getting after is how are you transmitting that, whether it be externally or internally, over to those machines. Many organizations right now are using FIPS encrypted USB devices. They'll pull the CUI data out, walk it over to the machine, plug it in, print whatever or make whatever part they need, unplug it, wipe that dang device and put it back on the shelf for the next time it's used. That is being protected more than likely with BitLocker, and that's fine because it's data at rest. Where BitLocker does not cover you is data in transit. So that's what you got to be looking at, is what mechanisms are you using? If you're using the cloud-based native tools within Microsoft and their GCC or GCC high environments, the O365 comes with the encryption on the email system so that you can safely transfer files back and forth. If you're not using that, what are you using, and what type of encryption is that leveraging to protect and wrap up that file that you're transmitting? That's really the focus for BitLocker. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, and to your point, Rob, if anybody, if there's, once somebody can get to that file at the service level, if they can find an exfiltration path, and again, everybody, I'm not trying to fault any security professionals, but, sometimes there's, people are crafty and they find ways to get things off of computers. So that's my only thing. If you have to, bet your life on it, I would want to encrypt. I would want to have some sort of backup encryption for that file.
And again, this goes back to the two different avenues. If you're just reaching for that certification, absolutely, BitLocker is going to be fine. All the assessors are going to come in and pass that. But for you guys in this space, there's more to it than just that, right? So the data that and these designs you guys are leveraging plays a vital role, and our adversaries want that information. So the more you can protect it, the better off our warfighters will be.
Yep. And if you go to Microsoft and you actually look up BitLocker and what are the options, how you can make it, they actually say, they talk about it being FIPS 142, checks the box, all that stuff. They said if you want additional, do file level encryption. And so again, what is Microsoft's file level encryption? It's MPIP. So they're suggesting it if you want additional protection, you can do it that way.
And that's all tied to maturity, right? So
absolutely. All right. Well, I think I want to thank everybody for coming. We've come to the end of our time here, and thanks again. Thank you to Jay. Thank you to Rob. Again, we'll be following up with you, providing this deck as a follow-up. And if anyone has any questions, Redspin does a monthly online CMMC Connect on the last Thursday of each month. And so make sure you check that out if you want to get more information. Redspin's a great, I'm actually a CCP, so I've got 1 foot in on the CMMC community. However, I'm nowhere near the stature of a Rob or some of these other folks that live and breathe this stuff. So, you know, they're a great asset, Redspin. They can really help you out, and you know, definitely drop by and check them out.
Appreciate that, Blake. Yeah, there is no agenda to the CMC Connect, folks. Just we have our panel of CCAs there. Bring your questions. They'll do their best to answer them. So it wouldn't surprise me if we start talking about Secude on our next CMMC Connect for a lot of the aerospace and manufacturing companies out there.
Well, we'd love that. So again, thanks everybody, and we're looking forward to our next webinar.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And we're out.